Virtual special meeting, October 5th, 2021. Roll call, please, Mike.
Member Dahlman.
Here.
Member Dittmer.
Here.
Member Waymire.
Here.
Member Kerouac.
Here.
And Chair Hunter.
Here.
And Member Callahan is absent.
Okay, consideration of the September 7th ABR meeting minutes. Any comments, corrections, notions, whatever? Was anybody here?
And move to approve the minutes as published?
Second.
Second, okay. Another roll call? Do we have to do that?
Okay, yep, we do.
Okay.
Member Dahlman.
Aye.
Member Dittmer.
Aye.
Member Kerouac.
Aye.
Member Waymire.
Aye.
And Chair Hunter.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes.
Okay, because we have to do this, the non-agenda items, is there anybody in visitor land that would like to speak to something that is not on the agenda? If so, then, no? Okay, then we're moving on. So next is what am I looking at here? Oh, those are the draft minutes. Okay,
Here's
You're done with
your
that.
agenda's on your right.
yeah.
Yep.
All right, consideration of sign permit application for the Union Church at 525 East Prospect. Did you, John? Okay, have at it. Yeah, please.
Hello, I'm John Hirsch with the Union Church and also with Kirkle Cobbles, who is building the said sign at the Union Church. We have an existing wood sign. I think the slides will show that.
Yep, sorry, trying to, hang on a sec. There we go.
So that's the existing sign. We felt it was kind of dated, as this committee approved several years ago. I think it was 2015, 2016. We built a new courtyard where the old manse was, and that is a stone courtyard with brick detailing and so forth. That courtyard kind of inspired the idea that the existing sign is a little bit dated, and we wanted to update the new sign, make it a little more attractive and complementary to the courtyard that we recently built. And so you can see the sign. It's basically in the same location. It is slightly closer to the sidewalk, within inches of where it was located previously. And it's also slightly bigger. That is, so it's an Indiana limestone carved sign. It will be double-sided, facing east and west, as the existing sign does. And that's what it's going to say. I mean, that is literally the image of what we're submitting for to be carved into limestone. And it'll match, and I will show you that coming up. It'll match the detailing of, so these are the lights. It'll match the detailing of this existing sign, which was a donor plaque that we installed in the, to the right of the altar. So that is in the courtyard to the east of the church and to the west of the manse. This is the lighting that we plan to use. It's under coping lights, and we actually have an example of how it looks. So it is very subtle, not bright. It's not up lighting, it's down lighting. So these lights are installed underneath the limestone coping and gracefully light the sign up at night without, it's a change from what we have existing, which is lighting that is on the ground and basically floodlights to the wood. So that's the example, and this is the example of what the sign looks like. I mean, what the existing courtyard looks like at night, just so you can see how the lighting appears. We're using the same stone on the veneer. It's called Eden machine cut veneer. It's very commonly used. Matches all of the detailing that we've already done. We're using Indiana limestone coping for the top of the sign, and the plaques themselves will be engraved Indiana limestone with a deep navy blue color on the face to do the lettering and the detailing of our church logo. And that's everything.
Okay, thank you. Want to start, Neil? Any comments, thoughts?
I think the only question I had on it is on the site plan, it shows the approximate location. Is the new sign, it looks on the site plan like it's going to be parallel to the street.
It
whereas the
is
existing sign
actually
perpendicular to the street.
perpendicular to the city sidewalk.
It'll
The
be
sign is perpendicular to the city sidewalk.
Okay, so it's going to be front and back sign?
It faces both east and west, so it's a double-sided sign. It looks the same on both sides. It's basically the same as the existing sign and same positioning, only it's slightly wider, and it's slightly closer to the city sidewalk, about 11 inches, I believe.
Yeah, that wasn't clear on the drawing, but thank you for explaining that. I think it's going to look fine.
I do want to share, there's a comment typed in on Zoom from Brad Anderson, who's a neighbor to the west. He says, if a sign is approved, I would prefer it not be placed on village property, is his comment. Although to a certain extent, that is a subject of a village board meeting. The village board has to approve a special license for it to go on village property.
So that's village property because of the old plat of where this was supposed to be a boulevard, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. It's
That's why, because otherwise the church is on the village property too, probably, or part of it.
Well, it's a 100-foot wide right-of-way
Right.
for the street, so it's only 16 feet from the front of the building
Okay.
to the front property line there.
Okay. Sheree?
I think it looks good. I think it's very attractive.
Matt?
I have no issues. Yeah, I think it'll be a lovely addition to what you're creating for the community and for your church. So, yeah, I think it's very nice.
I just want, you're removing the existing lighting that's there, so
We
it's
are.
going to be the new lighting.
So it's going to be much more subtle than it is currently.
All right.
And obviously, the existing wood sign would go away and would be replaced with this.
Yeah, my only question, and I know this is an issue, but, that type of lighting
Yeah, I wasn't
gives like
sure
hot spots,
they were going to put.
on the
So
stone.
that meant the old
And
wood sign.
because this is signage, I don't know if
New
you'd
one's
want to
gonna
look
be-
into something that's
clarified
more
that it's gonna be
linear,
like
maybe
old
pulled out a little bit
Yeah.
more
Sure.
from the
I
coping.
think they were
or
I'll
on
talk to the
coping.
electrician.
Bring
See if it could wash, because what's gonna happen is you're just gonna light the edges,
thought
like,
it might be
and not,
nice, but the way they
you
showed
you may
it,
take
it's
away
very
from what you're doing here,
Sure.
I was
and
struggling
lose
at
a little
first.
bit of that impact.
Yeah.
On a stone where there's nothing on it, I think but if you can imagine like your sign is in the middle, it's not gonna be the most elegant,
Yeah.
for all the money you're spending and what you're trying to do, that you may lose a little bit what you're trying to achieve with that. So maybe there's a more linear LED fixture that can they have them that just wash straight, uniformly straight down.
Thank you.
Something to look into.
I'll talk to our electrician.
Julie, did you? You did
I just
come.
wanted to make sure the other lights were going to be removed. The existing lights?
The ground lights.
Yeah, and they are.
They're gone. Yeah. So I think Matt brings up a good point. When I first saw it, I thought it was a little large for the plaque itself. But I guess that's okay. But I agree with Matt on the lighting. If you can get even lighting across there, because the hot spots are really they're going to detract from the sign itself.
The picture doesn't do it really justice on how subtle it is. The picture highlights the hot spots, as you mentioned, but when you see it in person, it's very subtle.
Well, it would be my recommendation anyway, something more linear. But, okay, so, any other comments?
No.
All right, anybody want to make a motion? Nobody?
I'll move that we recommend to the village board to approve the project.
This is actually for final approval, even
Oh,
though
this
they're
is for
doing,
final? I
yeah,
thought you
they're
said
they're
it
doing
had
the
to,
special license
I thought
separately,
you said
but,
the location had to be approved by the board.
well, it does. They have to approve a special license for it to be in the right of way, but the sign code still allows final approval of the appearance of the sign.
Okay,
here.
in that case, I move we approve it.
Okay.
I second.
Okay, were you going to say something? or
I
were
was
you
going to
gonna
say second, but
Okay, all right, then roll call, please.
Oh, okay. Member Waymire,
Aye.
Member Kerouac,
Aye.
Member Dittmer,
Aye.
Member Dolman,
Aye.
and Chair Hunter.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Approved. You're welcome.
Thanks.
Okay, moving on. Next is a consideration of a sign permit application for. That's you? Yes. Okay.
Good evening. I have a set of drawings for,
Thank you.
Is that what we have?
yeah, that's exactly what you have, but sometimes it's good to more traditional.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Kasia Niehaus. I'm new partner at SC Interiors. I have a pleasure to work with Soledad before, and I came back as a partner this time. And we are moving across the street to bigger space, to previous space of Lucky Bird, and hopefully this month. We are very close to finish, and we would love to have our new sign on the building, on the glass, on the window. So the signage is pretty minimalistic. It's very simple. It's just a logo of our company SC Interiors, my name and Soledad's name and mine, and pretty much the number of the unit and again phone number on the door. So we are planning to do black letters. Basically, most of it is black, and have just very subtle golden leaf frame to wrap around the windows.
Is the gold leaf on the glass or on the frame? On the
I'm
metal
sorry?
frame? Is the gold leaf on the metal frame or on the glass?
It's on the glass, in the side on the glass, yes.
Yep.
Good, okay. Okay. Welcome across the street.
Thank you very much. I love Lake Bluff, and I'm very excited.
Yeah.
Julie? What do you think?
I had a question just regarding the gold foil frame. Does that count as signage? Because it's, opaque and it's taking up space.
Yeah, it does.
So when it's calculated, does it still fall within our calculations to meet the signage criteria, or does it now exceed?
Well, there's a question of interpretation here on how we measure the area of window signage, because the sign code isn't specific. So if we were to, box around all the elements, well, you can't really do that for a border, but, just considering the other elements, even if you box around all the elements, you end up with a number that's over the 15%. But if you consider each element separately, then they're well under. They're only at 9.5%. So even adding in the gold leaf would not put them over the
Okay.
15% in that method.
Thank you. I
Yep,
just wanted
sure.
to understand that.
Yep, sure, no problem.
Of course.
That's all I have.
That's it? Okay, Matt?
remember seeing it.
Yeah, I think we probably need to clarify a little bit, because I think I would fully approve that. I think there's nothing enough, it's a lovely signage, and the windows are lovely, all that. And it seems kind of counterintuitive to say whatever because if you look at it that way, then the whole window is a sign because of the border, right?
Right.
So there is a mismatch there of intent versus application. So I think we need to kind of come up with something so that we don't always have this issue. And maybe it helps because we see each one, but there's nothing here that is remotely offensive to the scale of the windows, what they're trying to do. It's very subtle, even though it takes up some space, but it's very lightly, it's a light touch on the windows. So I have no issue at all. And there's a lot of transparency, even within your signage, that's Z, right? That's still
Yes,
transparent.
that's transparent. You could see through,
Yeah,
so it will be all
It
open.
seems like the most, delicate way of doing it. So I have
Thank you.
no issue at all.
You're up. You.
I like it.
You
I
like
think it's elegant.
Okay.
I think it's well
Thank you.
done, and I agree with Matt that I think we should either just continue to do the same thing all the time, so we're consistent, or change the rules. But at the same time, when you mentioned the whole window, you know, we are getting these graphics that come in, that cover the whole window. And if we're gonna take a look at this, maybe we should take a look at that
Yeah.
also.
Sure.
I think that,
But I
last
like
time
what
we
you-
talked about that, you know, it was like, let's put another designation in there as almost a display window as opposed to a window. It's not
Yeah,
a see-through window anymore, it's,
Yeah, right.
yeah,
yeah.
but I like what you've done here, so.
Thank you. We just want to make sure that people who are passing, they will see what's going on inside, that the signage will be minimum and they can see through.
Okay, I guess my turn. So the gold leaf is on the glass, not, the way I read it at first was you're gonna cover the black frame. With
No.
gold leaf, I thought that's not gonna fly.
No,
So on the glass, good.
on the glass, very subtle,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. Otherwise, I think it's great, and again, welcome across the street. Let's have a roll call. Oh, well, no, let's have a.
Can I ask
y-
one more?
yes.
Is there an issue with the fire department with the letters being gold? Is that an issue at all, that the fire department or anybody has any say on what the number needs to be?
No, our code just says a contrasting color,
Okay.
that the numbers should be a contrasting color. I think the interior has some dark colors, so maybe the gold would stand out more.
Okay.
But that is
I
a
have
good
another
question.
question, Bob.
Yeah,
I'm just curious, are you planning on putting the lettering and the black box on the inside or the outside?
I believe it's from the inside.
it's the die.
I don't
cut.
know how they, to be honest, I don't know how they apply it. I would assume that it's from the inside.
The difference is that if they put it on the inside, it'll last a lot longer.
Okay. Is it any difference if we have to do this from the inside? I will specifically say that it has to be from this inside, but we didn't plan
Yeah,
this.
nobody does it on the outside anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. It's just all pretty much.
Actually, the previous owner, because I was peeling them from the window, they were outside, but, you know, it could be both ways.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what you,
Okay, so now, you got your question answered? You get your question answered? Okay, so did we start on a motion?
I move to, are we simply approving?
Yes.
Yes, I move to approve as submitted.
Second?
Second?
Roll call?
Okay, Member Waymire,
Aye.
Member Kerouac,
Aye.
Member Dittmer,
Aye.
Member Dahlman,
Aye.
and Chair Hunter.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. It's
Thank you
approved.
so much. Wonderful to meet you all.
Welcome.
Fuck,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Jody time. Hmm?
Yep.
Night.
Okay, Jody, we are ready for the streetscape presentation. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me to your meeting. Let me share my screen real fast. Say, Mike, it says that host disabled participant screen sharing.
Oh, that must have happened when I shared mine. I will turn yours back on.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, I'm making you a co-host because it did not just offer me anything more direct about screen sharing. Hopefully that works.
Okay, thank you. Let me try it.
Sure.
Okay, can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
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 Wonderful, thank you. I apologize that I'm not there this evening. The reason that I'm doing this from right next to my Wi-Fi box at my house is that what we had discussed doing was, I know that the public was invited to attend this meeting because we've had some very successful public outreach. And following this presentation, which is, about 40 slides, we were going to do input polling activity where we would ask everybody to pull out their iPhones or other device to participate in some questions and answers. And so before I get there, does everybody in the ABR have their smartphones or another device nearby that they could do this activity?
Yep.
Yes.
Awesome, great. And then this will be a great way that we can also get inputs from folks that are online watching in from the community. So I'll just get right into it. As you all probably know, we've been engaged by the community to do a streetscape plan for Lake Bluff's downtown area. And tonight we're here to present some of the findings of the outreach that we've done to date. An agenda is here, so I'm just going to talk a little bit about the project scope, introduce the Scranton Avenue streetscape, and then talk about what we've done so far with regard to the poll and the farmers market. And then we're going to present some preliminary streetscape issues and opportunities, and then get to our next steps in our input activity. And then we can have a discussion. So for those that aren't familiar, the study area that we're looking at here is basically all of downtown. So blocks 1, 2, 3, and 4 are within here. We are generally looking at the space between the railroad tracks, east to Evanston Avenue, from North Avenue at the north, down to south of Center Avenue at the south, so that we're able to capture, the way that people get in from the surrounding areas along Scranton and Sheridan, Sheridan from the north, and then also the entire downtown area in between. We've taken a crack at identifying a goal, and this is just a draft, and we would certainly welcome everyone's inputs, but our impression of the goal is that the downtown streetscape should provide a unified and welcoming backdrop to Lake Bluff's charming character and to build upon the Scranton Avenue streetscape. And so I'll just mention too, because we've heard a lot of questions, even when we were doing the farmers market, Scranton Avenue in Block 2 is under construction right now. And this is a little bit unusual to be doing a downtown streetscape plan while a section of that streetscape is under construction. But for those that aren't familiar, Scranton Avenue is under construction right now because the roadway and sidewalks needed to be repaired. And the village took this opportunity to use funding that was available in order to do this work. So none of that work on Scranton is going to have site furnishings or other decorative elements, with the exception of some overhead string lighting and also some seat walls. So I'll show a little bit more about that. But the purpose of the downtown plan really is to take a much wider range, overarching look at the entire downtown area and how the entire streetscape could be treated to function for the future. Our timeline is here. We kicked this off back in July. We have a web page that's very actively updated on the village's website. We had the poll, we had the farmers market, and then we took some time to develop some preliminary concepts, and we're here to present those to you now. And then following tonight, we'll be refining those materials to a draft streetscape plan. And then we plan to come back at the November meeting to present that draft plan, get your input, and then finalize a streetscape plan. The final outcome of this effort is a documented report. It's not implementation. It doesn't have any funding associated with it to build things just yet, but instead it will be a plan that looks at improvements throughout the downtown area and priority projects and their costs. And so this will help the village plan for future capital improvements. And we'll be looking to you all at the November meeting to help us think through which projects are priorities so that we can start to organize some steps of things that the village can do in the near term, the midterm, and the long term. The Scranton Avenue streetscape, the plan is shown here. So the sidewalks are being reconstructed, the roadway will be reconstructed, the parking is generally going to be as it is today. The big change is that this area here at the corner of Scranton and Center right now has a big planter in the middle. That planter will go away and it will be surrounded by plantings at the perimeters, masonry seat walls that will match what's at Village Hall, and then overhead festoon string lighting at this area. And I know that you are all familiar with this because we worked with you to develop this plan, and so it's a pleasure to kind of come back and show you what's planning to be built, and then to talk about next steps. This here is a section on the bottom that explains those things. So you see the masonry seat walls and the overhead string lights. So a little bit about our outreach. The outreach statistics are shown here. The website is getting a lot of hits. Social media is getting a lot of views. We had almost 800 responses to the community poll. We asked questions that people responded to, and people also were able to provide original comments. So beyond the 800 or almost 800 responses, we got 1,200 comments. We've had a lot of good input. The farmers market, we were there on September 10th, and here's a photo. So we had lots of input activities. People were giving us their thoughts. Who we heard from is listed here. For the most part, we heard from people that are neighbors. They live and they dine and they shop and they use the post office and the village green. They're very proud of downtown and had some really good input. About half of those folks are Metro riders, which is important to note. And the age groups are indicated here. We asked in the poll when people visit Lake Bluff, and so for the most part, they could respond with as many answers as applied to them, but people use it at all times of the weekends for sure, and then the daytimes and the evenings and the weekdays. So it's getting a lot of use, which is useful to know. We asked how people travel to downtown. A lot of people are walking, many people are biking, a lot of people are driving, and while there are some people that are taking the Metro train, many reported that they don't take the Metro train. So I think for the most part, this is a neighborhood serving walkable type of a district. We asked when people do visit by car, where do they usually park? And so we see that most are parking on street in the downtown area. Some are parking on street in the residential areas. It seems like not many people are using parking lots, including, we separated it out between the municipal lots and the Metro Station parking lots. So that's something to think about. Something we heard about during the farmers market was, can we make that Metro Station parking lot more usable? It seems to be a resource that doesn't get a lot of use right now. We asked about what types of events or experiences bring you to downtown Lake Bluff. So you can see the list here, but lots of great fests and events that are bringing people in. We asked about the flexible streetscape installation at the north side of Block 1, that it's been converted to an outdoor dining area. And so we asked if folks would be supportive of other similar types of flexible arrangements in the future. We weren't specific to one location, but we just wanted to get a pulse read. And we heard overwhelmingly that 82% thought that that was a good idea and they liked it. But we did see a lot in the comments that people felt that they would like it to be a more attractive appearance than what's out there today with those Jersey barrier walls. We asked people to rank the streetscape amenities that were most important, and they're ranked here. We heard a lot about more outdoor cafes, more benches and seating, plantings, lighting, etc. We did hear a lot in the comments that people would like to see outdoor seating that was not necessarily associated with a restaurant. So if somebody wanted to bring their own coffee or their own brown bag lunch and have a place to sit and not feel like they had to be part of an outdoor dining associated with another establishment was something that was important to them. We asked what about downtown is special that should be protected. Some items here, people love downtown Lake Bluff. It is just dripping with character. And people love that it's got sort of a New England feel. It's got a mix of like low height buildings. And by the way, we're not talking about making any modifications to buildings or private properties. We're just looking within the sidewalks and the streets and the landscape spaces in between. We heard about downtown gems, that there's unique places such as Scranton Alley, the fountain near Village Hall, the gazebo, and people really wanted to protect those and get good access to them. People love the detailing of the buildings and of the streetscape. And we heard about seating nooks, that there were lots of different places for people to sit and gather, and they wanted to keep that. The fests and events, of course, and just the people being, great neighbors, a great spirit to the community that wanted to make sure that we brought that out in the streetscape. So then we asked what should be improved upon, and we heard, that this should be a people-first space. There was a desire to make this more a place for people and less for cars. We heard a lot about widening the sidewalks and not necessarily physically making them wider, but maybe making them feel wider by removing some of the clutter that's in the sidewalks. Things like sandwich boards and tables and chairs that seem to block some of the clear routes. We heard about traffic calming to try and make this more pedestrian friendly, so slowing the traffic, making better use of parking areas, providing more seating and gathering spaces, as I mentioned earlier. We heard about amenities and providing more amenities for all different types of users. And so some suggestions that came up a lot were Adirondack chairs, fire pits, bike racks, bottle fillers, dog waste bags. Maintenance, of course, is very important, that whatever gets done does need to be maintained properly. We heard about power and providing better access for farmers markets, and also looking to the future, EV charging stations. And then we did hear, and I think we heard this also from you all at the ABR, that don't change Lake Bluff too much. There's a lot of great stuff about it that we want to make sure we don't overdo it, and simple is best. And so that's something that we certainly are taking to heart as we think about this. That's for the poll. Here's some outreach that we did from the farmers market. So we had a few different activities. People were coming up to our idea booth and they were marking on the map. They were making their own personal inputs, and then they were also taking stickers to do this sticker activity on the right, which was a visual preference type of a survey. A lot of the inputs that we heard at the farmers market were very similar to what we heard in the poll, just formatted in a slightly different way. I wanted to get to the preferences. So when folks ranked the images, things that ranked the highest are up at the top here. And so people like the existing benches. They're sturdy, they're attractive, they're very comfortable. People also liked the Adirondack chairs. And so there could be an opportunity to do both in a careful way. As far as the trash receptacles and recycling receptacles, we did hear a lot of interest to make sure that we provide not just trash, but also plenty of recycling. And so there was some interest to use a similar model to what's out there today, that's shown here at the right, but incorporate things like signage so that people know what is a recycling container versus a trash container. The bonnet at the top, it could happen or not happen. I would say this would be a preference of Public Works and the waste stream. And then the other one that was highest ranked was this option that's aluminum with wood paneling on the left. Bike racks, there's a lot of discussion about bike racks. We know that Lake Bluff is a destination for bikers, and many bikers don't use bike racks because they have very expensive bikes that they like to keep very close to them. That said, when people ranked the bike racks, the ones that ranked the highest were these ones at the top right, which are basically bike bollards. You can chain your bike up to the ring of these, and they're very sturdy. Parking signs is something that's part of our scope. So we asked folks what kinds of parking signs they would like to see. And so the purpose here would be a parking sign at the entrance to a municipal parking lot, including the Metro parking lot, that would identify it as public parking and could give folks information about the type of timing and regulations about that lot. So people selected these two on the right. This one on the left is a little bit more elaborate with a stone base and a decorative column. This one on the right is a little bit simpler, but you get the idea. It's basically just a simple panel sign that tells where the parking is. Just FYI, this example is in Glencoe, and this is a Metro parking sign, and this gives information about when people can park in that lot. We also asked people about amenities. So the types of amenities that we were showing were the overhead string lights, like we are planning to have on section on Scranton, fireplace, fountain, swings, trellises, parklets, and the things that ranked the highest were the overhead string lights and also the the fire pit. We had a chance to take a look back at the branding report that was produced a few years back, and we saw that fire features were things that were included in there, and so we picked up off of that. And it doesn't necessarily have to look exactly like this one, but just the concept of a fire feature was something that people seemed to like. So a little bit about issues and opportunities. This map is a diagram that shows some opportunities in town. A couple of things, we think about how people enter into town from beyond. There are these visitor entries, people coming from Sheridan, from 176, Scranton, coming from the metro station. Those are what we would call the public entries. These other ones from the neighborhoods we would call the neighborhood entries. But we want to think about how people enter into the downtown area. And then we've identified a couple other things, different street types. This red represents what we would call the shopping and dining street. So this, encompasses blocks 1 and 2 and 4. The greens would be the neighborhood residential streets. These are the streets that generally have green parkways next to sidewalks. And then we're picking up on a couple of things that we wanted to run by you all. One is we know that Scranton Alley is just a treasure and it's wonderful. There seem to be opportunities to continue some of that alley connectivity. For instance, we already know that this space here in the alley between Village Hall and Scranton Alley seems to be an opportunity to do something like that long term. Likewise, you could follow these orange arrows around through the backs of parking lots and potentially carve out a pedestrian way, whether it just be striped and signed, but could give somebody another opportunity to circulate through downtown area. And then also, Village Green is very special, but we think that there's an opportunity along these sidewalks. Today, there's a Veterans Memorial here. There is a couple of benches and a drinking fountain, but these really could become sort of these activated park edges, something that stays close to the edge, but maybe provides other seating nooks and opportunities for people to safely gather. And then we've identified places where we think safer pedestrian crossings could happen, or crossings here that would have vertical features to draw your eye from the metro station into downtown. So a couple of images that describe some of these things. We just took a couple of views. This is coming into the downtown from Scranton, so I'm about to go underneath the Metro Bridge, and some opportunities for signage, for plantings along the slope, enhanced railings. And we know we likely won't be able to change the geometry of these things, but these are just ways that we can enhance the spaces that we can enhance. Again, enhancing the bridge railings here. We could consider art panels on the concrete wall behind the railing, and again, an enhanced railing. This is the view looking from the metro station parking lot east to Scranton Avenue. Opportunities for vertical features of some sort. It could be 2, it could be 1. An opportunity for a business sign kiosk. Opportunities for improved parking lot signage so people understand how they can use the metro parking lot. I will say that we looked closely at the pedestrian crossings here. It's got all of the right things that an IDOT standard pedestrian crossing would need to have. It's got the continental striping and the proper signage and the proper truncated dome detectable warnings. So our thinking is that, whatever we can do to kind of beef up this connection by having vertical things that draw you in visually. And then coming to Sheridan Road from the south, opportunities for downtown entry signage and split rail fencing with native plantings that tie into the Route 176 corridor plan, also tying into some of the other split rail elements that exist on Sheridan Road. And I should mention too that TESCA developed a Sheridan Road planting plan that is going to be presented to the SEC next month for this area as well. So making sure that we're all well coordinated with that stuff. And then once we get into downtown, this is the crossing at Scranton Avenue. So my back is to the fire department. This is a really difficult area. We've got sidewalk that's pressed up against the back of curb, and we know we have a slope here, but would love to see an opportunity to maybe pull that sidewalk away from the curb a little bit and get kids safer distance from the road, amp up the crossing with better signage and markings to clarify that it's a place for pedestrians to cross. So some safety things. And just to now to get to the more decorative things, we called this area here in front of Village Hall, here at Center, the Civic Entry Street. It's not retail or residential. It's a place for civic business with the fire department. And so again, looking for opportunities to make these safer intersections and safer sidewalks by pulling the sidewalks away from the curb if we can. And then adding code compliant tactile curb ramps. We could think about a speed table that raises up the intersection to slow cars and make it more pedestrian friendly and to calm traffic as they're coming into town. For the shopping and dining streets, we know that there are some maintenance issues with the paving that's at Block 1, and so we'd be looking to improve the pavement durability and accessibility. Most likely would want to match the broom finish jointed concrete that will be constructed at Scranton Avenue. And then we heard a lot about the outdoor dining area here, so we've got some options to formalize that. We heard some comments at the farmers market about looking at a shared street. So we've got some examples of that, but a shared street is essentially a flush curbless type street that all is at the same elevation, and it can be used in flexible different ways. So I'll show you some imagery of what that could look like. For residential streets, I think for us, it's just safety is key here. And so maximizing visibility. So, generally we would want to stay away from tall shrubs next to where people are walking for safety purposes, enhancing the crosswalk striping. Those could be much wider and thicker. We could add some landscaping to screen where on-street parking is, just to make that appear a little bit nicer. Adding the accessible detectable warning plates, infilling the trees. We know that the village has some initiatives to add more trees. And we just love the bronze plaques, and it's just a acknowledgement that, it's a great program and should continue and should be protected. The alleyway connectors, this explains some of the alleyway connectivity I was talking about. So back here behind Village Hall, formalizing that, it seems like there's a lot of unused excess space here that could be converted to pedestrian uses. The village green edges, so these are some of the things that are happening along the village green edges today. And the idea would be to keep the memorial as is, but replace the paving around it. Same thing where we've got drinking fountains and different benches with different bench pads and seat walls, opportunities to maybe formalize that and make it a more welcoming, useful nook of seating. Okay, so now to the fun stuff. Block 1. So we did a couple of studies, which I'm sure you all saw in your packets. The existing conditions are here, and this aerial photo even shows the temporary dining setup here. We've got 5 spaces on the north. We've got 12 spaces on the south when the dining is not there. And so we've done a couple of studies. And by the way, this is showing what's happening on Scranton to the east. So we've got 17 spaces there today. So the first concept is a festival street, and I've got some photographs to show what this looks like, but a festival street here would be a curbless street which maintains the two-way traffic. Instead of having diagonal parking on the south side, it's parallel parking on both the south and the north side. So the excess space is given over to dining on the building side here on the north side of the street. Some of what we heard was that while people really enjoyed having the outdoor dining, there were some issues with food service, people having to cross the street, and having the dining being closer to the buildings would make it easier to manage and safer. So that's what this one shows, the two-way curbless street. So it could be closed down. It would be flush, the same grade, so that the elevation of the roadway is at the same grade as the elevation of the sidewalk. That way it could be closed down periodically for fests. It would give the village more flexibility that way. And then we've got some opportunities for gateway features, whether it be a pedestrian kiosk here or an overhead arch. And I've got some photos to show what that could look like as well. You can see also we've included some of these seating nooks. So there could be a little fireplace seating area with Adirondack chairs in these areas. Also, we've tucked one into this area here in front of the realty business. Oh, and as far as parking goes, I should mention, so this little table at the bottom left reduces our parking overall from 17 to 10. Concept 2, this would keep the diagonal parking on the south side, parallel on the north, but this would be a one-way westbound only. So we know that that's how it's operating today. I will say that normally I don't recommend one-way streets in retail districts, but this is a one-sided retail, and this is an area that we want to really keep the traffic calm. And so by having one-way westbound, as I'm sure you're all experiencing, you're not getting cars coming in from Sheridan at this location, which really does a lot to calm traffic. So by doing this, we still do create this wider seating area at the north. It's just a slightly different configuration. So we've got some, and then as far as my screen is blocking here we go. So we've got 16 parking spaces in this concept as compared to the 17 existing today. So these are some sections that describe what those plans show. This is the existing conditions, and of course, in this 18-foot angled parking space today is where the outdoor temporary dining is today. We've got 18 feet, so we still have a pretty wide sidewalk on the north side. The concept 1 in section goes from 18 to a 30-foot wide sidewalk and parallel on both sides with a two-way system. Concept 2, again, keeps a pretty wide section here, but we've got one-way westbound traffic with parallel on the north side and diagonal on the south side. Okay, so a couple of photographs to describe what some of these things look like. And I would ask you to more focus on the space rather than the materials. But as far as a shared street or a curbless street, these are some examples, some local ones in Fountain Square Plaza in Evanston. This is an asphalt street next to unit pavers, but the asphalt street is at the very same elevation as the pavers. So this white ribbon in here is a flush drainage curb only. And so what this does is this gives the city the ultimate in flexibility that they close down streets in different configurations. They can have tents set up anywhere they want to. They're not bound by the curb. So it is all the same elevation all the way across from building face to building face. In Batavia, River Street is the same kind of idea, but it's more decorative. It's all unit pavers. So again, from building face to building face, this is all flush. And what both of these streets do, since they don't have curbs, is that they've defined their edges with things like planter pots and planters, or in Evanston's case, bollards and planter pots, so that cars know where to drive. This is another example of a curbless street in Florida, but the same kind of idea, looking from above. This is all flush. Gateway features, so a couple of different types of gateway features. We know that we've got overhead string lights planned for Scranton Avenue, and so we could incorporate more like that. Some communities are using the stainless steel cables that support the string lights to support things like banners. More formal things like in Valley Junction, Iowa, which is a lighted arch with changes color with the season. This is an example in Kankakee, which is just a pier. It's actually based on a historic pier that we found in Kankakee and digging through some old materials, but it's a masonry base with a precast concrete shaft and then some lights that hang off of it. So different ways to mark the entry, but again, we're looking for something vertical to draw people in to the downtown area from the Metro parking and the Metro station. Lighting, so some different options for Cantonary lighting. This example in Oak Park has formal, rigid arms that have a pendant hung from it. These examples are light poles with strings and some pendants that hang from it. And then these are more of the string lighting. So those are some different options. And by the way, this is another shared street in New York. Banners, medallions, and planter pots. So as far as banners go, Lake Bluff has really attractive light poles, and we've heard a lot of comments about the banners that the banners, while they're nice, they're really large for the light poles, and the bracketing system that supports them is very clunky. And so we were looking at other opportunities to incorporate some sort of feature on the light poles that's more in scale with the light poles. So this is an example of a smaller banner. This is an Elmhurst. This is another example of not a banner, but a medallion, which has sort of a branding opportunity. And this is a metal element that's two-sided and is affixed to the pole. As far as planter pots go, we understand that the planter pots need to be replaced. Many of them are in poor condition. And we didn't want to get into a discussion yet about what kind of planters, but we wanted to first ask your thoughts about planter placement. Today, the planters in Lake Bluff are located close to the building facade, similar to this example. We could alternatively consider having planters put out to the curbside like these, or out at the corners like these. And what that does is it helps demarcate that edge. We did hear a lot of comments about people feeling like there was a lot of clutter in the sidewalk, and so maybe better organizing these elements so that they are in a consistent pattern so people understand where to put dining tables and where to walk, something to consider. I'm getting down to the end here, and thank you for bearing with me. As far as other elements, you know, the fire pits, we already talked about the downtown Wheaton example, lots of other examples. Porch swings and Adirondack chairs. We understood that people were very proud of Lake Bluff's, you know, very kind of casual, easy breezy lifestyle. And so looking for opportunities to celebrate that could be with Adirondack chairs like this. They could be freestanding, they could be fixed to the pavement, and porch swings. You know, I joke with Drew about the ones in South Carolina and Charleston. I love those, and it seemed like that could be potentially something to think about if folks were interested in that. So I know I just threw a lot at you all. What we wanted to do is definitely get your input, but we also wanted to get the input of folks that are joining us virtually as well. And so what we propose to do is to have everybody take out their smartphones, and I'll take you through this brief exercise, and then we'll have a discussion. So I'm going to switch my screen here, but if you could all just go to your regular browser and click on the website called menti.com. It's MENTI.com. And when you get there, I'm just going to pull up my other screen. When you get there, it's going to prompt you for a code. And the code is on my screen here. It's 4646-4497. I am going to switch my screen to this new one here, so bear with me. Okay, is everybody seeing this new screen that says Lake Bluff Downtown Streetscape?
Yes.
Yes.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, so a couple of things about the Mentimeter activity. So you'll be answering the questions on your phone,
He's got his computer.
and we hope that everybody that's listening in virtually is also able to do this.
We're gonna comment. We'll have a chance to actually talk later too.
Yeah, we definitely will, but this is also for the benefit of folks that are joining us virtually. So I'm going to take you through. Please keep your eye on the screen, and then you'll answer the questions on your phone. And as we go through, you'll see everybody's responses. So if you ever get locked out for some reason, you can always go back to this website, menti.com, and the code will always be at the top of the slide. I'm going to go to the first slide. Okay, so this is just a test, but please enter your name, and then whenever you enter your information, just be sure to click the submit button on your phone. All right, it's working.
Where do you put your name?
In the box.
Say, Mike, do you have a sense how many people are in the audience,
Yeah, I can tell you that. Let's see here.
I just want to make sure I don't advance too quickly.
There's 8 on Zoom.
8 on Zoom.
Yeah,
Thank you.
sure.
So we should have at least 13. Oh, good. It's all working. That's great. Thank you all. Okay.
And-
I'm going to go to oh, go on. Was there a question?
Oh, I was just going to say, and we have 2 people in the audience here, Drew and one other person in the audience.
Oh,
here.
wonderful. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to advance my slide. And if you see that I've advanced my slide and your phone hasn't gotten there, just go ahead and click, the next slide. It should prompt you for that. So based on all of the material that I shared, we're asking you to rank the streetscape projects that offer the most value. So you can kind of click and drag around the order in which you would like to see streetscape projects implemented. And the projects are the things that we talked about, the bridge entry features going under that Scranton Avenue underpass, improving the crosswalks and the signage at the intersections, the Sheridan Road gateway features, and the South Sheridan Road
Just click on
area,
the slide,
those Block 1 areas,
and then you can hit the arrows there to choose an option.
the Village Green areas, the alleyways, and the public parking lot signage. I'm surprised nothing's popping through yet. Is it working for you guys?
Yeah, just a lot.
No. Not what I want.
I might just advance and go back. Let's see. There we go. Cool. Block 1. Village Green is in the top ones. We'll give folks another couple of minutes or seconds. Village Green and Block 1 are like neck and neck.
Jody, could you repeat the code just for clarity's sake? Just maybe.
The code?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's on the screen at the top, and it's 4646 4497.
You get nothing here. You get the same.
Yeah, we're all at the same spot. Yep. She's showing the results up there as people.
Yeah, I'm
in.
taking a pause because I only had 10 and I was waiting for 13 to come in, but we can keep moving here. But it looks like the Block 1 streetscape improvements and the Village Green perimeter seating and gathering are the highest ranked, which that's very interesting to see. Here we go. Public parking lot signage is not getting so much love, which is okay. All right, I'm going to keep moving to the next one. So in this question, we're asking people to select the preferred Block 1 configuration. And so concept 1 is that Festival Street, the 2-way traffic curbless street with parallel parking on each side. Concept 2, and this one had fewer parking spaces. Concept 2 is the 1-way system that has diagonal parking spaces on the south side. And seems to be the most popular.
Can we talk to her? Can I ask her a question?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
of course.
Yep. Go
Jody,
ahead.
Yeah,
Is it, can you have the concept too with the curbless street? I don't see why not.
so curbless streets really don't work well with diagonal parking because you're fronting in to the spaces, and without a curb there, you have the tendency to go over that curb into the green space. So if you went curbless, and I won't say that you can't do it, I've seen a curbless street that is not very successful with diagonal spaces for that reason. So we would recommend curbless go with parallel spaces.
Could you have it on the north side only?
Curbless on the north side?
Yeah.
Boy, that
Sounds
might
like-
be unusual from a drainage standpoint.
Okay.
Okay, well, I'm glad to see that nobody's marked no change, so that's helpful. It looks like concept 2 is the one that's preferred. I'm gonna go to the next one. Okay, so now we're gonna ask about the preferred gateway feature type. So option 1 is the gateway arch. Option 2 is the gateway pier. Option 3 is the string lights and temporary banners. Or if you don't think any of those work, that's okay too.
I can't get to that.
You can just hit submit there on that screen. And now it's on the next
okay.
one. Yep.
And I can see that, you know, the gateway arch especially might appear a little bit heavy for that area. And so I feel like what I'm sensing is that maybe something that doesn't take up so much square footage. Is that some of the thinking?
Well, if you want opinions, I prefer nothing there.
I'm with
And
you.
that's okay too.
I agree.
So much for
Yeah.
anonymity, but.
No, that's okay. There's no right or wrong answer.
I see a problem with the Great Gateway Arch is if we pick the one-way street, we're putting the welcoming arch where people can't go.
It's a good point. I think the other thing to think about though, too, is that, you know, we've got the train coming through here and in many ways is very visible to the train and to people driving on Sheridan Road. So it doesn't necessarily have to be an entrance, but I can see how it could be perceived that way.
It just seems very heavy for our town, just
Yeah.
as a element. It's,
Sure, understandable. Okay, I'm gonna go to the next one. This is helpful. Lighting features. So preferred specialty lighting, decorative arms and pendants, lightings and strings and pendants, or just the lighting, strings and bulbs, or none. I mean, we know that we've got the strings planned for Scranton, and we do plan to carry those across at the corner bump outs. But with that, we could add other things. Looks like lighting, strings, and bulbs is carrying the day here. That's helpful. Right, we're getting to the end here. So planter pot configuration. The planters located at the building face here on the right would be similar to what is out there today, or locating them near the intersections or at the back of curb are other options to consider as well. And I will say that the type of location is, in my opinion, going to dictate the size and the type of the planter that we choose. The planters that are out there today are very small. If we want something that does a little bit more to kind of shield pedestrians from traffic, we'd want to select some sturdier, larger ones. So planters located at the back of curb seems to be winning. Okay. Light pole identifiers. So far we're looking at, could it be a smaller banner? Could it be a medallion? Or do we just leave it alone and have nothing on the light poles at all? You guys have a very attractive brand, so it's an opportunity for sure to promote that somehow, whether it's vinyl banner or a metal medallion. I think people like the banner.
Kind of looks that way.
Those results are completely counterintuitive. That's not what I thought it would be at all. I thought it would be the opposite.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Okay.
Putting stuck in.
We're getting close to the end here. So this is a list of streetscape amenities. And so we're asking what streetscape amenities are most important. And so after you've dragged and dropped them around, just be sure to click submit.
Where'd you get that? I don't get the list.
Hit refresh.
I did.
I think I might just back up the slide just to make sure I'm capturing these things. Sometimes this tool gets a little funny.
So you gotta make a choice and hit submit there.
There we go.
Oh, yeah, I don't know why yours is not going on to the next one.
It's a new phone, Bob. Hope it's not wrong. Is it working for you?
No, I'm getting
Can I see it?
funny stars, yes.
You got some funny stuff.
Yeah. My sheriff's badge.
If you need to log out and log back in, that's always an option.
Okay. There you go.
It looks like outdoor deck cafes and lighting enhancements and landscape plantings are at the top. The outdoor fireplace has just made a speedy jump to 7th. That's very interesting. Thank you all. Okay, that's my last slide. I really appreciate everybody playing along. It's hard to get everybody's voices in a quantifiable sort of way, but we really do want to get to the discussion. And so what we thought we could do just to initiate that is to start here. Let us know any suggestions if we've missed something, if there's something you really don't want that, or something you really do want us to think about. This is just open-ended, and we can just, from here, just get right to discussion too. Pick the curveless tree. Has anybody seen a curbless street? Has anyone experienced it by chance? There's not that many of them around.
I'll just mention at this moment, we did get 2 comments from the public by email earlier today
Oh, good.
too. So Gary Lawrence commented that he and Jeff Lawrence both like concept 2 with the one-way street from Walnut to Sheridan.
Okay.
And then Tim Penich, a resident near downtown, also sent in an email, which I forwarded out to the members of the ABR, saying that he prefers the curbless street in concept 1.
Yeah. Okay. I'm unsure what this comment means. Dogs like before or pigs or cats? Oh, was it a public art program?
Yes.
Got it. Or pigs or cats. Well, and in the interest of time, if anyone at the ABR has questions, I'm happy to pull up my screen from the presentation and we can go back to speak to elements of the presentation that you might want to talk through.
Jody, is there, in concept one, you've lost parking spaces.
Yes.
And it doesn't seem like from the results of the survey, it's counterintuitive to what we've been hearing for the last 20 years, that people would rather have something other than parking. So I guess my question is this an either or as far as 1 and 2, where you couldn't combine the curbless street with the, without the curve, but with the parallel parking on the south side of the street instead of the north side? The curve in the street itself just kind of bothers me. But
Yeah. Are you able to see my screen? I tried to switch back.
Yes.
Oh, good. You're talking about this curve in the street here?
yeah, it's,
Yeah, we could look at the geometries to straighten that out. I think we were just trying to accommodate the transition between East Scranton and West Scranton. And then, of course, we get the right turn lane here. But I'm sure that, there's ways that we could play with that geometry. We're landscape architects. At some point, an engineer will want to look at this and run auto turn diagrams and all that stuff. But we get part of the way there. But am I hearing that there's interest to have a straightened out street with parallel on both sides?
we would have the same amount of cars that you have in concept 1, only you'd have a slightly different profile of the street. You'd have-
Sure. So it would be concept 1, but straightened out.
Well, yeah, I guess so, or concept 2 with the concept 1 south side.
North side, you mean, right?
No,
No? South side? Okay.
yeah, concept,
Oh, so you're saying concept 2 meaning not a curbless street?
no, it's a one-way street, but instead of 12 parking places, you would have wider green space or wider and parallel parking instead of, and the curbless thing. You basically have a wider street or widen the green space, one or the other.
Yeah, we don't need, if it's a one-way, we don't want to widen the street. We would want to give that space to the green space or to the sidewalk. But yeah, if what I'm hearing is that there's a desire to look at a one-way curbless street, basically concept 2 with parallel spaces on the south side and curbless, that could certainly be an option.
I'm just, kind of exploring other options. Anybody else?
Well, could you do concept 2, just throwing it out there, and and I don't know if this, instead of having parking on both sides, just eliminate the 4 spots on the north side and expand the seating? Because expanding the green space doesn't make a lot of sense on the south side. That doesn't do much for our town. But if we keep the 12 on the south side, so then you have this, it's nice having the seating without cars right there. I think, that's, I think if we could eliminate the 4 spots, increase the seating on that side and keep the 12 on the other side, I also think it's a safer, diagonal parking. You're not pulling in. Or you landscape that, something with that space where the parking was.
Yeah, I think
Maybe-
it's a good point. You're talking about these 4 spaces here,
Yeah.
converting those to
Yes,
just more
that's a
sidewalk.
lot of space for just 4 cars.
Yeah, it definitely is. I think the only thing to think about, and I don't know enough about the restaurants and how they use it, but if they have curbside pickups or deliveries that want to pull here, there's other uses for parking spaces sometimes. But if we don't think that we need to accommodate that, I think that is a really smart use of the space to just expand it and lose the 4 parking spaces and have this be.
Or we can put the porch swings, then they can swing out into traffic. That's just an idea.
Yeah.
But I think you could use that space better than 4 spots.
I tell you what concerns me a little bit is that we're basing all these decisions in a way, not all of them, on the summer activities. What happens in the winter? We've now got 40 feet of concrete space out there, or whatever it would be.
But I think people could start doing those igloo things, if we keep this up. Those great outdoor igloos, that you rent for $25 and you eat in there. Have you been participated in those?
Maybe.
But that'd give you a lot of space for,
It does
something
give
like
you a lot
that.
of, I'm just hoping that we make this a year-round place.
Right.
Well, and I guess I would just throw out that if flexibility is something that the village is interested in, and I think it makes a lot of sense, especially given the last, year or 2 that we've had. Making it a curbless street gives you that flexibility, because what that means is that it's striped out so you have parking. But if you wanted to, say, close down these spaces, for instance, at the north side and extend your igloos or your dining across here, you could do that. Or you can close down the entire street, or you can close down the south side. Having this curbless and flexible allows for that change in use depending on season or time of year, or what the different uses or fests would be. But it does come with a dramatic reduction in parking, so we understand that's important too.
Hey, Jody,
Yeah.
could you explain again the reasoning why you could not have a barrier curb on the south side and not on the north again? I mean, like if you wanted to have a curbless north side, and why can't you do that and have a curb on the south but not on the north? Is this a drainage concern?
I don't know for sure that you can't. So I think I heard the question right. That the question is, can you do curbless on the north and a curb with diagonal spaces on the south, correct?
Yes. Somebody else brought that up earlier. You made a comment about a drainage concern. And I know that street is pitched northward. And the crown is really high relative to the sidewalk. So I don't know if that's what you're referring to, that there's a change in grade there that would negatively impact in controlling stormwater.
Yeah, I'm not sure. That would require maybe an engineer to look at. I don't know. I've never seen that done before, to do curbless on one side and a curb on the other side. Here's an idea though, is we could consider this. We could have concept 2 with a flush curbless street, and we could use those precast bumper curbs that would be placed in the diagonal spaces to keep cars from traversing into the green space. That could work. Does that make sense at all?
Wouldn't that be like having a curb though?
It would be like having a curb, but you would allow the drainage to move through, and you could move it if you needed to make it a flexible type of a street, but it would be just like having a curb.
Those tend to have a short lifespan when people are plowing public streets.
The snowplow.
The barrier curbs have short lifespans?
Those, the parking stops
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean,
And they're ugly.
yeah, I just, I would be really concerned about cars just going beyond the road.
Oh, I agree with that.
And I guess back to Drew's question, and I think Bob, you asked this question earlier, if it was curbless on the north side, but we had a curb on the south side, I think we would just need to see how to drain all that. I'm not saying it can't be done. We would just need to ask some engineering about that.
And I think the curbless, if we kept parallel parking, I think that's just as dangerous, I mean, that's a whole negotiation also. I think that's, to me, just as dangerous as hitting the grass versus a table. The curbs are a good kind of stop for cars, when you're parallel.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, I just find both are sensitive to
Yeah, you don't want to damage your
helping
tires.
define where the car should start and stop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if it were curbless, we would want to look at other perimeter type things like
Sure.
bollards and planters to mark that edge for sure.
Yeah.
I know a church in Deerfield that has curbless parking that's not parallel, it's at an angle.
Yeah.
And it's been that way for 10 years, and they've had no problem with it. With people driving over the edge or encroaching on the sidewalk. It's worked fine.
I like Matt's idea of pulling those 4 cars out of there and expanding that out, and maybe it's a combination of plantings and curbs and curbless.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really, kind of a mix of things, and you start to create some little nooks where that space is.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned, I think it was Drew the other day, I was driving by Buffalo's the other day, and they have loaded the street with planters, and it's like,
Yeah.
it is a jungle there, and it's really pretty cool.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Oh, were you talking about Bufos and Highwood?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know exactly where you mean. Yeah, no, it's pretty nice over there.
They've gone crazy,
Yeah, and they've been doing that for years.
but it seems like there's more.
Well, and that is actually,
It's all perfect.
that's a bump out. That's a curbed bump out in the middle of the street. Anyway,
I think there's something to play with up there, with those four areas are.
When it comes to the expanded sidewalk on the north side for all the seating for the restaurant, so, I mean, obviously with what's happening now with the street closed off, that's not gonna stay. And so this would be part of the future of having additional seating for outside for those restaurants to be able to have all that outdoor seating. But during the summer, until they decide to take all their seats away, and then we have the big slabs of concrete, unless somebody decides to buy the igloos and put out igloos, right?
Kind of it, yeah.
So having all those tables, and I know that this is just a representation, but having all those tables packed in, I think becomes another one of those things where we all love sitting at those tables because it's only one deep and you're just kind of, it's even though you're out there on the street, it's almost more intimate than having a bunch of tables packed around you. And even the way the tables are set up right now in the street, they're spread farther apart, which kind of gives you just a little more space. And so when it comes to expanding the sidewalk, are we gonna pack in as many people as we think we are? 2, are we doing this just for those restaurants to be able to do that? Even though we all want outdoor cafes, it's just, we're saying these people are gonna have outdoor cafes, but there's not, if the real estate shop wanted to turn into a restaurant, no, they have no space for outdoor cafes in this layout. And is there any way to have additional flexibility or something to consider? You've blocked off and have this green space right in front of the real estate place and all the sidewalk adjacent to it. Is there a way to kind of mingle that more in to give you, break it up more and maybe spread out more and even have the opportunity to have those public spaces more spread out too. The public spaces are there. In this particular plan, you've got the public space in front of the real estate and public space on the corner, I think. Should there be something else to help break it up, and also something else that's available to people when, you know, all those seats are taken away during the winter as well? I'm just looking at a
Yeah.
whole bunch of seats packed in there.
Yeah, no, a couple of things. I think, for one, you know, having these green spaces, these planters with, you know, spaces for casual seating like Adirondacks or something else, you know, provides sort of that casual type of seating. As far as breaking it up, we wanted to maintain access so that if somebody was parking their car, they can get into this area pretty easily. But it can be broken up with other things like trees and grates or other planters in the middle, for sure. And then I'll say too that at the farmers market, we had a lot of conversations with folks about this concept of seating, you know, seating tables, and whether they should belong to the businesses or belong to just the public. And so something that the village could consider is having sort of a branded table and chair setup. It could be, you know, Lake Bluff Blue, for instance, that anytime that's a blue table and chair, that's for anybody to sit in. It doesn't have to belong to a certain restaurant, for instance. So there's some management to think about. But I like the idea, thinking about what this looks like in the wintertime, you know, and, you know, we don't want it to look like a big barren sidewalk. And so breaking that up with things in here to make it look more welcoming, I think is important. It's a good comment.
Another thing I just wanted to talk about was in the concept one, maybe, where you've got a couple of those other fireplace Adirondacks. I'm not opposed to Adirondacks. I don't think they're really the most comfortable chairs. I have a tough time. It seems like you're always sliding the wrong way in them, but I understand how they're casual and they're fun and they can be very durable. As far as fixing them versus not fixing them, you know, in the Village Green, you're doing things that are facing fireplaces, and you're doing things that are facing the gazebo and like the green area. So it's hard to kind of say which way do you want to have things face. And so it's just something to think about also as the concepts become more
Permanent.
solid, is which way do you want to
Is
have
that for
people
them
facing, or
or
does
for
it
the
need to be
village?
that they need to kind of go in a circle?
Yeah.
So, or are they movable? So you're
Yeah.
just moving around, and then
That's
where do
very
they
cool.
end up when they're not in the right spot?
Yeah, and I will say movable furnishings are so successful because it gives people an option to put them in the sun or in the shade or with a friend or by yourself. We've done a bunch of research on this for another project, and we talked to campuses and municipalities all over the country who have done movable tables and chairs. And what they've told us is that they typically lose 10 to 15% per year. But they find that it's worth the investment to replace them in order to provide that kind of a space. So with that, even if they are movable, there are some that are heavier than others so that they're harder to move. Or we could just fix them with very simple steel tabs. I think the tethered look is definitely not an attractive look, but there are sleeker ways to fix them if they need to be fixed. And then to the point about, you know, which way do they face? You know, there are these nice little coves in between the trees. So easily, if this fire pit wanted to flip around 180 degrees and kind of be in this space facing back to the park, there's plenty of opportunities to do that.
If anyone out there on Zoom wants to comment too, you can either type a comment or you can press the button to raise your hand, and I can give you permission to speak out there. So feel free to let us know if you want to say something.
Does anyone know off the top of their head, if we made that one way going that way and it was permanent, what sort of do not enter signs we'd be required to post right there? If it was a permanent one way going the other way? I mean, is it too big, do not enter signs? Is it up to us, or is it the Department of Transportation, or how does that work?
I'm not sure. There might be some state standards we'd have to follow on that. I'm not sure exactly what they are.
If we did one way going that way, then that's what would be what you'd also see, you know, with your nice kiosk showing how to get in around Lake Bluff, and then the big, huge do not enter sign,
Right.
red.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, so the public right-of-way for Sheridan Road ends here, of course, where the edge of the sidewalk is. If it's not on, yeah, that's a good question for the DOT. I was going to say that even if it is a do not enter sign, it could still be placed on a tasteful, like, black post with a black frame around it, so it doesn't have to look like it's completely utilitarian, but we do need to get that message across if we turn this to a one-way westbound. Can I ask, so I heard, you know, back to the earlier part of the conversation about the street, I heard a couple of things. I think I heard that there was a desire to try and keep as much parking as possible. And so that was the thinking behind, you know, keeping the 12 diagonal spaces. I heard consideration to replace the 4 north parallel spaces with more plantings and sidewalk. And I heard, you know, can we make this whole thing curbless? So we could certainly look into that, whether this whole thing could be curbless or if it could be part curbless and part with a curb. I'd have to do a little bit of research, but are those the types of things that we should take a look at for the next iteration?
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay, we could definitely do that.
I see we have a comment on Zoom typed in by Mike Dorniker asking, when is the current outdoor seating in the street parking spaces going to be removed? And I think that seating was approved through the end of this year. So I think at the end of the year, right, Drew?
And the board could change that, but right now, that's what the most recent approval should reflect.
Okay,
Correct.
thanks. Yep.
I'm going to throw out a wacky idea. If you do away with the 4 spaces and expand that outwards in some geometric fashion that allows you to put up a permanent, some sort of little, not the igloos, but something that doesn't detract from the architecture of the building behind it, but that would accommodate maybe, 6 or 8 people and have a fire pit in it, and it may be a 3-season thing. And it keeps that going all year round, or most of the year round, and you could actually do some of it over on the other side. Little things that are just very simple and straightforward and very attractive, not dumb-looking things.
Were you suggesting that it would be like a 3-season shelter, like a shelter with a canopy on top?
Yeah,
A place that people could sit outside and be protected from the
they could
weather?
be outside and be inside, with their fire pit, but they'd be semi-enclosed. So
Sheltered.
they'd be covered and I don't know, I'm just kind of thinking out loud. I'm thinking like greenhouses, but that'd be terribly unattractive and and hot and cold.
Mm-hmm. There's a image that I don't know if this would help at all. Oh, I know where it was. I don't know if this gets to what you're thinking of, but in Western Springs, there are a series of these wood pergola type shelters that are close to the street, and people can sit in them for dining. Why am I not getting to it? Goodness, here we go. Here. this image down here at the bottom, it's just a simple timber structure, but they do a nice job. They, you know, they hang lights from it. This is in front of a restaurant. And so I don't know if this kind of gets at some of what you were thinking about, maybe in terms of scale, maybe not necessarily the materials, but is that a little bit close to the scale that you were thinking?
No, I don't think it needs to be, 12 feet tall. I think it needs to be low scale and not detract again from they're not the focus of that whole side of the street, the buildings are. But, so this is just a little hidey hole, if you want to call it that, almost like this is not a good example, but the bike storage by Lake Forest train station. That maybe has 3 sides, I'm just trying to not design something right now, but.
One potential downside of having that on the north side is you may be blocking the view of someone's storefront and their sign.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
Jody, can you go back to the concept 2, I believe?
Yeah. Sorry, not too far.
Actually,
Concept 2.
that profile shot would actually be better, I think. Yeah. So one of the things a restaurateur had mentioned to me, and this is actually on the Center Avenue Partners block, but the idea of having a large canopy that would extend out over the walk. That was something that was talked about early in the COVID experience. Like, is that a possibility? And have it something that you could enclose or leave open, but it would be like cantilevered out and like a classic Parisian or, European cafe. So this, imagine like, Bob, your idea of like some sort of structure that could make it more usable space was, and you all being the architects, what if that comes off the facade and cantilevers out, and then that using, remember Kerouac's idea of having that 4 spaces removed, maybe it leaves ample room for a walk, but gives a functionality to the users to take advantage of and create more of a 3-season space that could be perhaps under the control of, similarly as we do now with license agreements to use the public way. I'm just thinking, practically, but it gives, I don't know if that's more attractive architecturally, rather than having a freestanding structure or not, just kind of coming it from the facade versus the street side. Just throwing that out there, given that another restaurateur has thrown that out as an idea, that they were interested in pursuing that early on, and may still come back with something like that eventually, but.
And Drew, when they were talking about that, they were talking about extending it from the building face out to about 10 feet or so.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, sure. Like you've seen in Europe.
But yeah, I've seen them much longer than like 20 feet too. I mean, much. Yeah.
I can't imagine that working with the architecture of the building.
Sounds
can't.
expensive.
Can you?
I don't know, it's a tough one.
That's a tough one. There's a lot of ins and outs there.
Yeah.
It's not simple.
I mean, you've got building signage and stuff to work around.
It does seem like it might be simpler to do it freestanding.
It's interesting to see how many people like to sit on the tent out in the street. And it's a 4-season tent right now.
Yeah, because it's outside.
I don't know how they could do it on the sidewalk close to the building where it would be 4-season.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why they do those igloos. It's not elegant, but it's a solution. Yeah, they do have canopies, like I'm using these canopies that they scissor out, from the, you can go
Yeah.
pretty good distance. That's all tensioned and the set up in the scissoring. But
I don't think Bob would be happy about doing that.
I don't think so either.
Right.
No, it's pretty clunky on a commercial building.
Yeah. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah, that's interesting.
They also have
Beyond the concept 1 and concept 2, are there any other elements that you'd like to talk through? And we shared a bunch of different site furnishings and features and things like that. I mean, I like that we're talking about the geometry because I think that that has to be solved first. That's kind of the biggest thing.
Well, the biggest thing is it okay to have a one-way street? And it's been there for almost 2 years now, and I don't think you told me, nobody's complained about it.
Well, you know, I work with enough traffic guys that whenever they want to make a big change like this, the first thing they do is they do a traffic test where they paint and stripe and sign and test it and see how it works. But you guys have already done that. And so, you know, it's a locally controlled road and you've tested it and it seems to be working, but, you know, that's definitely up to the village to decide.
Chair Hunter, you made the comment that nobody's complained about the outdoor dining. I think
What
I would.
about the one-way street?
No, other than that, I would say I've heard that there's been from time to time people voicing concern about servers and restaurant staff crossing the street, and you know that is problematic. And I think I've heard twice that somebody thought that people were traveling too fast down that. I don't think we've ever issued a citation, but it's such a short run, you know. So.
Yeah, I think if it was permanent, you would hear complaints. I think we're all accepting that it's visually unacceptable because we're hoping it's going away. I think
Yeah.
if it's there for another year, I'll come into the office.
No, and that's what I'm saying. The complaints have been the aesthetics. It's like, hey, listen, I understand the necessity of having the Jersey barrier for safety. At the same time,
Yeah.
does it need to look like a Jersey barrier? You know,
It's a big deal to make that a one-way street.
For
But
sure.
on the other hand, I'll tell you what, it's a traffic calming thing, the way traffic is now.
Yeah, it's,
You know, before we had stop signs there, people would be doing that like they were on a race course.
yeah.
And sometimes they still do.
People don't stop. They
Right,
didn't
it's
stop
a
anyway.
suggestion,
You
it's
could
not a-
sit there at the brewery and watch nobody stop for, you know,
Yeah.
100 cars.
Yeah.
So going eastbound or going towards the lake.
yeah.
Anybody that's coming from the north down Sheridan Road and used to be able to turn there and just swing around the park and keep on going, it's like, that's pretty,
Yeah,
you took your life in your hands trying to get across any of those intersections.
Yeah, I think the one-way will help with a lot of, you know, just kind of controlling, you know, it is a very congested area, so it's nice to kind of limit all the, you know, that middle section, like how many cars are coming into that middle section at the same time.
Jody, by doing the one-way, how does that change maybe, and then it seems at least tonight, the feedback was nobody was in love with the gateway, you know, approach, but how do you shake hands with the train station without that gateway element, structure or whatever, and the one-way element? Maybe that needs further noodling.
I mean, I think the purpose of the gateway was to create some sort of visual cue that there is a there, you know, that it's not so far away. We measured it. It's like a 2.5-minute walk from the metro station all the way to like Bluffington's. And yet people feel like it's so far away. And so I don't think that we necessarily have to have those big downtown gateway piers. I think that the festoon string lighting that's planned for this area in front of Innovasi, and then this sort of, you know, talks to festoon lighting that's here in front of the market. These will serve as a gateway in a way because they'll be very visible from back here. You'll see it. I don't know if anyone's been to like downtown Wilmette, which has just installed some festoon string lights at their corners, but you can see them from Green Bay Road. You know, it's very visible. So I think that we don't necessarily have to have those things here. I do think that having a pedestrian kiosk at Block 1 and maybe also at Block 2 to help orient people and promote the downtown businesses would be something that could go a long way to also help make that connection. But I don't think that we necessarily have to have these big things for that to happen.
It's only a town of 6,000 people. And it's 2 blocks long.
Yeah.
So.
Right.
We gotta keep that in mind,
Yeah,
you know.
nothing worse than a
That's a
big
good
gate
point.
leading to like a kid riding his bike down the road.
Well, most of the people that go downtown live in town.
They live in
Yeah.
town,
So
they know
it's
where
not like
everything
they have
is.
to have the gateway to
Yeah.
make them turn the corner to go in, when it's a
Yeah.
one-way street going the other way.
Right, yeah.
What I think.
It's an
too,
excellent point.
On the other side of the street, without detracting from the train station itself, I think something interesting needs to take place over there that kind of leads you into the parking and lets you know that that's part of downtown too.
Yeah, well, and at the very, very least, having a very prominent, simple sign out here in front of the parking lot that faces Sheridan Road so that cars know that they can park there. We talked to so many people at the farmer's market that had no idea you were even permitted to park in that lot.
Yeah.
And that's a really simple, that's like the low hanging fruit type thing. Very easy fix, low cost.
And Jody, on the east side, in terms of the gateway into the community, you had made some high-level comments about the, I don't know if you can go back to your map, which denotes the various streets and civic, neighborhood, et cetera.
Oh, yeah.
There we go. So your neighborhood entry on the east side coming up Scranton, you denote that as residential, and you talked about leaving that similar to the way it is today, if not identical, with the sidewalk and the green parkway in between with trees and that, and not having any of these other elements that are being discussed in the shopping and dining spaces, correct?
Correct. Yeah, I think for me, I feel like the neighborhood entries, well, actually, neighborhood entries and even like some of these other ones, for me, it's all about safety. It's just about visibility, safer crossings. So making the pavement markings more obvious, cleaning up the landscaping so that it's, you know, blocking cars where it needs to block cars, but not too high where it's next to a sidewalk. I think it's more safety type things at the neighborhood entrances and also this one here, this pedestrian crossing. But I agree, I don't think that it's the highly decorative types of things. I don't think you need it. I mean, just like we heard, this is a place that so many people are walking to.
And so block 3 is the interesting kind of
Yeah.
outlier in that it's currently commercial on the west side and detached single family on the east side. And it's the village's comprehensive land use plan identifies that, or wants that property to be developed as transitional residential, to make that transition to detach from the central business district. So I think that residential street probably does make sense, presuming things go that way. Should it not, I don't know that this group needs to consider all contingencies, but maybe that doesn't change, you know. But because right now it's kind of a hybrid. When you go down, like half of the street has those street lights, and with and paver, it looks more consistent with the blocks to the west visually. And one of the things that we've talked about internally is that even those lights right now in front of the PNC are actually gas lights still, not even the. And from a operations standpoint, my team would love to make them be like the rest of the lamps, right, and convert them because they're just a handful that we have left in town, and so, you know, parts are harder to keep up with and to find, you know, and so the idea of converting those to be exactly like the rest of the lamps, maybe that can be part of this conversation when you get down to those nitty-gritty levels.
Yeah, well, I didn't even notice the gas lamps, Drew. I appreciate knowing that now, but
Yeah.
I would say that our thinking was that, you know, the library is of course a really special place and it's got a lovely seating area in front, but our intent is that beyond that, the sidewalk should be, you know, nice and clear and wide, and that there should be green parkways. We thought that that would be a really appropriate transition between the neighborhood and the downtown to the west. There doesn't seem to be a need, especially if it's going to be transitional residential. There doesn't seem to be a need to have like a traditional hardscape type of an urban section in that street. I mean, we felt like it should remain soft.
And one of the other things I think, and again, bridge is not to be crossed this evening, but the feedback that I hear anecdotally is very few merchants are in love with the idea of having any sort of garbage or recycling canister or a bike parking area in front of their stores. I mean, that is like a universal truth. And so, but there is clearly a need for bike parking, you know, so where's the best place to put that? One of the things, Jody, I don't know if you've captured that, but one of the things we talked about was even on that north west corner of Oak and Scranton by the library was kind of a good area for bike parking that maybe
Yeah,
to be taken
definitely.
advantage of there. There seems to
Wait,
be.
the northwest corner or this corner here
I'm
in
sorry,
front of
yeah,
the library?
I meant the southeast corner, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, there's a, in front of the library here, there's a lot of opportunity in the right of way to do things like that. But, you know, with bike parking, I mean, generally, you know, we like to try and space it around so that, you know, it's not like one big block of parking. But the other things that could be considered is that we have municipal parking lots throughout, even just to take one parking space and convert it to, you know, half a dozen or so bike spaces is something that other communities would do. I mean, it's parking for your vehicle, whether your vehicle is a car or a bicycle.
Have we done a study like how many bikes have ever been locked? Because you either have middle school kids who won't do it, or you'll have
Right.
$5,000 bikes that are next to their hip, where the, you know, it just seems like there's not a huge lesson in how to lock your bike up in Lake Bluff.
And that's part of the village's marketing materials to show that most people leave their bikes unlocked everywhere.
It's been my favorite story. I've heard their backpacks on steps for 4 hours. So it is a lovely thing, but I think the bike racks are chasing a dream scenario that we don't really use as much as we think we do.
But does it become like a designated parking area then instead? Because even if they don't lock them, I mean, it's like, it seems like over by Bluffington's, people line them all up in that one bike rack because it's there, right?
Well, it's also close to where, like, I don't think a kid's gonna go over to the library and then walk back to that's what I'm saying.
You know where kids stole their bikes is right there where you're crossing by the police station.
Right.
And into the park. And we talked at one time about expanding that sidewalk and putting bike racks there. If you go up there when there's something going on in the park,
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's
they're laying
good.
all over the place.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
So
that's,
it's this corner right here, this kind of acute angle.
Yeah, right there.
and during
That's a really good one.
last summer for the farmer's market, we had that fencing up, that kind of net fencing up, and we actually put bike racks at that area, and they were well utilized.
Yeah.
Not only on farmer's market Friday, but throughout the weekends when gatherings, people use them. And I think even afterwards, like we didn't put them back this summer, people left their bikes there because, we kind of trained them behaviorally to put their bikes there.
You know, something to think about with bike racks is that in some ways, the temporary bike racks that the village has can accommodate a lot more bikes than the types of models that people responded to. And it gives you flexibility if you wanted to move them around and place them in places where people will use them. I mean, it seems like you might get more bang for your buck using more of those temporary bike racks instead of the fixed ones. Just an idea.
Well, I think that was this group's conversation the last time, is like nobody's going to, is while they are functionally more secure, the ones that were selected in the survey, the reality is if it's something I just can't throw my front wheel in, like down at the lake or something else, it's just not going to get used. Right. And then it just becomes an obstruction in the sidewalk.
I got another one from left field. The other day, there was a couple going down the street in a modified golf cart. If there are towns in Florida where that's the mode of transportation, are we getting there? Is that just somebody that had one?
Yeah, they are not presently authorized under the village's code.
No, I wouldn't.
No,
surprised.
so if you saw that was unauthorized operation of a golf cart.
Okay.
So-
I've never seen it before, and I haven't seen it
Yeah.
since. That's just, huh? Have you here? Yeah. It's,
It's been talked about. The board has had two I'll say, significant conversations about it, but has never gotten comfortable with it. I suspect that will come up very soon again.
That's many parking lots, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Jody, you believe you've gotten significant or adequate feedback, I should say, for
Yes, this has been tremendously helpful. Thank you all for making the time. I'm just kind of clicking through just to see if there was anything else
Oh, you know what?
lingering.
Can you go back just one more time, go to you at the viaduct area? So,
Oh, yeah.
so this, from what I understand, talking with Metra and the Union Pacific Railroad, this was this summer, and then there was a call had maybe a month ago that the bridges that are there, the railroad bridges, will be replaced in the next 20 years. So,
That's nice to know.
so the idea is for the village, IDOT, Metra, to start or seeking funding to do a phase one to what that could look like in the future. There's so many different modes of transportation going on in this little area between the bike trails and the pedestrian ways, automobile, train. Granted, it'd be very difficult to pick up the tracks, say, oh, well, let's do cut and cover. Let's make it, let's change it's very expensive and highly unlikely, but the idea is it could look different. And visually, it's not a very attractive part of the community. And it could be, it's a great opportunity where you have this confluence of all these modes of transportation, right? But so it's an opportunity. So that's what, hopefully this phase one study could result in better than what we see here, this, kind of.
That wall on the right could be a beautiful fern garden, a vertical fern garden on the wall.
Yeah, plenty, as Jody points out, there's lots of surface area that can be improved visually. And then the functionality, part of all this stems on, the village doesn't necessarily want to put a, nice, or invest in this area knowing that it floods periodically, and that's not a great visual at the same time. But so that's being pursued as well. But I just wanted to put out there, there's this idea that a phase one could be done, and it's, it's a long time away, but that's just something that's.
But I would also caution not making this too much of something. It's very narrow. It's a very tight
People drive too
corridor.
fast.
They drive too fast. The kids on the bikes on the, that whole area is just it is the confluence, right, of everything coming. And I think that's also it seems like there's an opportunity. It's also, if you do too much there visually, I think you're creating distractions where people need to be.
There's a lot going on,
focusing.
right, yes.
So that's maybe if you had like lights or something, some cool lantern lights going down there or something that's helpful and aesthetically pleasing instead of like something that's drawing your eye to pay attention besides the road. That's just my little spiel on that area.
I'd be interested to know in the phase one if this retaining wall has to be rebuilt anyways, if it could be pulled.
I think it does.
If it could be pulled back. I think that the tightness of the space is what always sort of, gives me pause. Look at it. It's like almost in line with the face of this curb. Something does not seem right here.
Yeah, no, it's, and you need to give some space to those sidewalks because that's just.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Tightness. And
Yeah, what these diagrams show is really just kind of putting lipstick on what's there, but to really solve the space is a much more important endeavor.
Yeah, I think if you tiered that wall on the left with some plantings or something, just so it's aesthetically pleasing, but it's not. So, it's not so massive, like going through a tunnel. Maybe if it's stepped back on the left and you get some tiered plantings or something, that might be a nice little gesture.
Yeah, does anyone know Freeway Park in Seattle? It sounds like that.
That's what I was thinking, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's so nice.
What's behind that wall on the right? Obviously dirt, but
Right. Well, there's also the bike
Part of the
path
bike path.
connection.
Yeah, and there's
where
like
it turns
but
and
I'm
connects to
just,
the
I mean,
north-south.
I'm looking at that and saying that if they're gonna rebuild that, is that, they're really gonna rebuild that wall?
I think they have to, and same for the wall on the other side.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's-
They've done some work on there that was largely cosmetic. That will need a complete redo when they do the bridges.
Well, that's 20 years out then. I'm probably not gonna worry about that. That put me over 100.
Well, and I mean, we were looking at the ways people come into downtown, of course, but the way that the discussion has gone and what we've heard so far from the outreach really is that downtown is this, special place for the people that live there. And so, if we were to prioritize projects, especially hearing about the future 20-year plan for this improvement, it seems like focusing on the downtown area first is more important than going out to the periphery areas. Would that be a fair statement?
Yeah.
I feel like I've gotten the information that I need. I don't know if anybody else has any other comments or questions.
Are we getting together again?
Yes, November. The November meeting, we plan to come back with a draft streetscape plan based on what we've heard tonight and everything else that we heard, of course, from the outreach. But what you'll see is a more refined set of plans and sections and other photographs that, kind of hone in on what we think the streetscape plan would look like. And so we'll have a chance to kind of look at those things, select from alternatives, and then start to talk about prioritizing some projects.
Okay.
Okay, well, thank you all. I appreciate it so much, and we'll share the output from that Mentimeter activity back to you all so you can see. As we've been talking, people have continued to put in their comments, so I'm going to go look through those as well.
Thank you so much, Jody. That was a
Thanks,
great
Jody.
presentation.
Yes, thank you. We appreciate all of your time and energy into this. It's really helpful. Have a good evening, you all.
Take care.
Bye.
Thanks.
All right. Now what?
Should we make a motion to adjourn?
You got anything-
So moved.
You got no?
Are we good? Are we good? Sorry, didn't mean to jump on the,
It's okay. A second?
I got homework.
Who's second to adjourn? Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Recycling?